you find this?
Trackmania 2020 was released as a remake of Trackmania Nations. However, the game experience is very different from the free-to-play Nations titles. A lot of what made the experience of playing Nations and Nations Forever has changed in the game, and not always for the better. The core gameplay has been kept, and the graphical upgrades have freshened up a game that has stayed largely the same for 14 years. But along with the positive changes, there are also changes that take away from the experience. Some decisions made for the game experience hinder the customization and accessibility of the game, both big parts of what made the free-to-play title so popular. Here are some personal opinions on Trackmania 2020, about 3 months after its release. The updated visual style looks incredible in my opinion. The use of more simplified shapes, brighter colors, and cartoonish aesthetics is incredible for this title, and will age very well as time passes for this young game. It is refreshing to see the new aesthetic of the game when compared to the stadium environment's forebearers in Nations Forever and Mania Planet. The more realistic aesthetic of the previous stadium games, going all the way back to 2006 with Nations, have been kept all the way up until Trackmania 2's iteration of the stadium environment. While I don't really have complaints on the older visual style of the stadium, the newest stadium game being on Mania Planet did reuse the exact same visuals as older Nations titles, effectively being a remastered version of Nations and Nations Forever. While the stadium had improved visuals, this didn't necessarily work too well with the Mania Planet engine. Too often, I would notice that some of the shadows and shading would make parts of the track too dark to determine the next turn. The overall darkness of these environments, combined with the lack of gamma control in Mania Planet, sometimes made the game a little more difficult than Nations Forever, where the lighting and shadows were balanced with the stadium environment. Specifically regarding the car, I think the design of the stadium car is great. It keeps the buggy-like open wheels design of the original Nations car, along with its general proportions, but introduces a much more futuristic shape and some interesting touches. Depending on which modifier blocks you drive over, the car will visually react differently. These touches add a level of refinement to the otherwise simple aesthetic of the game, and makes the car feel more alive and personable, increasing the overall play experience of the game. The new camera 3 view is a good addition. While it takes a little while to get accustomed to the hood camera, the new view makes placing the car in a turn much easier, as the player now has a visual cue on how close their car can get before hitting an obstacle. Of course, if someone doesn't like the hood camera, they can go back into the settings and change the view back to the bumper cam as featured in the previous titles. The removal of the Rammstein border on roadblocks is pretty good for casual players, but time hunters may lament this on tech tracks, where sometimes cuts can be achieved through special uses of the Rammstein. I personally find it a good change, as in previous stadium games, hitting the Rammstein reduced a lot of speed, thus ruining a run. Coupled with the same physics as in previous stadiums, this also makes the game just slightly less buggy and irritating to players. The physics that have made the stadium environment such a popular one are the same for Trackmania 2020. This means that virtually all the advanced driving techniques one had picked up in the past titles will work just as well in this game. Speed drifts, no slides, and bug slides will work just as well in this game as they did in the previous titles, and the handling of the car remains just as twitchy and responsive as they were before. The seasonal campaign tracks and the track of the day make the game feel more refreshing to play and gives players another reason to visit the solo campaigns for the game. Whereas previous titles would just come with 100 or so tracks that would make up a solo campaign, the seasonality of the campaign track selection means that it would be difficult to stay on top of the leaderboards without making a run on the campaign tracks each season. The track of the day gives track makers a chance to have their works of art shown off to each and every player of the title, and again makes the solo campaign more competitive as there is now a constantly changing leaderboard that one must place onto in order to remain a top player. In addition, the training maps are pretty good tutorials on the basic driving methods and skills that any player would need to thrive in the game. The training maps don't explain much literally or verbally, but train a player just by asking them to simply finish the track using a particular skill. This is a good balance between having a full-blown in-game tutorial and throwing the player into the deep solo campaign grind. A lot of Nations and Nations Forever players will remember the ability to download and use custom car skins and car models from Trackmania Car Park or Mania Links. Trackmania Car Park allows users to upload and download custom car models and car skins, while Mania Links were small in-game websites that hosted custom content. Skins could be applied on the default cars of respective environments, and entirely custom models could even be downloaded and used in-game. Both have mostly been replaced in Trackmania 2020 with an in-game skins feature, allowing players to create and share skins through clubs. However, the in-game skins feature is massively hindered. Car Park was a free website. If I wanted to use a Minecraft minecart as my car model, I could simply download a minecart model off of Mania Planet, put the .zip into the Trackmania car model folder, and I'd be playing the game like Minecraft Steve. The in-game skins in Trackmania 2020 only allows the use of custom skins in-game if players opt for the highest tier Club Access. Club Access provides players the ability to create, join, and share within in-game clubs. For the most part, club membership isn't completely game-changing, making Club Access unnecessary for the average player. Even stepping up to the standard access at a reasonable $10 a year is not enough for the ability to do something that was once free for all players to do. Compared with the free-for-all system for skin customization in previous titles, the in-game skin mechanic greatly reduces the ability to customize a player's experience to their own. Even just seeing a totally different car or skin in-game made a player feel more at home within Trackmania, and was a huge part of the community. Locking these features behind a $30 to $60 paywall makes Trackmania a less enjoyable experience as a result. Another feature omitted from past Trackmanias is the ability to set a custom display name with different colors and typeface options. Using a unique syntax, a player can change the way the display name looks with the hexadecimal code for colors, the width of the name, and whether the name is in bold or italic weights. This was done in the player profile in the menus, and your name would show up thusly in any leaderboard, server, and replay. As in previous titles, players are required to register an account through Play the Game. In Trackmania 2020, this is your Uplay account. However, while the past Trackmanias let you set your display name globally in-game irregardless of your Trackmania or Mania Planet username, it is impossible to do the same and set your display name different from your Uplay username. This is an additional amount of customization that gave players a lot of freedom, as most veteran Trackmania players usually do set a cool looking display name to bounce onto servers with. If Natio were to implement the ability for custom display name again, I guarantee that many players will customize their names just like they did in the past Trackmania titles. Trackmania 2020 was delayed by a couple months, owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. Even then, after many updates to fix netcode issues, the connectivity and reliability of in-game connections to servers is not very good. Anecdotally, I have had occasions where I would fail to restart a run in time attack, with the car not returning to the start. This would sometimes take up to 10 tries on the restart key before the car will finally allow me to start a new run. With the format of time attack being that a player just does as many runs on a track as possible in an allocated amount of time, this wastes precious seconds and minutes of doing nothing and waiting for the game to stop being buggy. Previous Trackmania titles have had some infamous bugs in the past, but these bugs were not as outright game stopping as the netcode bugs. You can always retry a run in Nations where you just land bugged, but you can't retry a run if the respawn bug kicks in Trackmania 2020. Much progress has been made since launch, so I only expect this aspect of the game to improve as time passes. There have been a lot of discussion on the subscription model for Trackmania 2020, and I don't really feel the need to reiterate further, but it is worth noting that for full access to creation tools and online player-hosted servers, you have to pay about $10 a year, and $30 a year or $60 for 3 years for the club features. I find that the $10 a year is pretty reasonable for the game, as much simpler as it would be to simply pay an upfront cost for the game as in previous titles. As long as I see the game continually improve for its life, I don't mind the subscription model as much as others. If you really want to, however, Nations Forever is still active and still available to download for free if one so desires. Controller support through Uplay kinda sucks compared to the Steam controller support, especially using a DualShock 4. The game will work with controllers, however, it simply is not as seamless as it should be. The in-game menus pay more attention to aesthetics than usability, in particular the Live tab. Whereas past Trackmanias would organize each server via a logical list that included the number of players, the location of the server, and the average player rating for the players on the server, the Live tab simply gives a bunch of squares with the name of the server, and one has to click on the server to check the amount of players or location. If Natio reorganizes the server list into a more logical format, it would work much better than having to click on each square to reveal the details. Overall, it's still a pretty good experience, and already has a solid player base, be it coming from the previous titles or newcomers to the series. I do look forward overall to the future of the game, as the future for the title appears very bright. Time will tell whether or not new players will be able to justify spending the annual subscription in order to play the game. But overall, I feel that this title is definitely worth it for the $10 a year fee. The series has already gained some more popularity in the streaming and esports world, so hopefully Nadeo is able to keep the momentum and grow the game in an organic, sustainable manner. The best change in the new Trackmania is that they took away the cars and made it a platform game.